We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. It is Emma's out. She'll be back on Monday, hopefully. Welcome back to the program. David Dayen, executive editor of the American Prospect, who is going to be in town in less than a month. No, almost a month to the day, October 16th. There is, if you're in New York, folks, I'll have more details. I'm going to be there. But there's you guys are doing a fundraiser.
We're going to do a little event on October 16th. That's a Monday night. It's going to be in New York City, and we're going to get more details. It's great that you're going to be out there, and we'll have that firmed up in the next week or so, and we'll certainly let your audience know.
I subscribed to the American Prospect about 5 minutes after you were named executive editor because I knew you'd be doing something great with it, and I honestly I feel like I should double my subscription. It really, you guys do such great work over there. I can't even. It's amazing. But
thank you.
All right, let's go through this. We're going to have Shante Sanders Beasley. She's a former vice president of a local UAW out in Warren, Michigan, on to talk more about the strike. But let's talk about this. I mean, contextualize this for us. I mean, this is a big deal. This is the first time they've gone. But what's your sense of Sean Fain and the administration, the Biden administration, and what their perspective is on this?
Well, Biden literally just 2 minutes ago wrapped up remarks on this where he said that record profits should be shared in record contracts. So, I mean, I think the administration's made their position pretty well known. Fain comes out of a sort of it's a movement within UAW called Uniting All Workers for Democracy. It's a reform movement. In past years, the beginning of bargaining with the big three would kick off where the head of the union would have a handshake photo op with the CEOs of the three companies. I mean, it was definitely, you can, at the worst, you call it collaboration or collusion. At best, you call it a friendly relationship between the union leadership and the CEOs. This time, Fain kicked that off by going to plants and shaking hands with the workers. And he has consistently called this the members' contract, the members' demands, not his demands. So he has opened up sort of this in a democratic way, and he's trying to right the wrongs of a number of different contracts that have been put forward, particularly after 2008 when they went to a two-tiered system. So there's sort of a retribution for the past, but also looking towards the future because we have a changeover in transportation to electric vehicles. The big three and other auto companies are trying to use this as an opportunity to say, oh, these electric vehicles, that's covered under a different master agreement than the internal combustion engines. And so we're gonna pay you less because we're not covered under a union contract for those electric vehicles. It's a race to the bottom, as Fain has said, and it's a key part. It's the context for this entire negotiation.
And give me a sense of where the Department of Labor is in this. I noticed, on Twitter, you took Politico to task for trying to make it seem like Marty Walsh was a magician and sort of working out these things. And you made the point that Julie Su went and dealt with the ports. I think we're looking at a strike there, and she had worked that out. What's behind something like that? Every time Politico does something, it always writes something. I shouldn't say every time, but the vast majority of times, it's always like what you're seeing is the second order story. The real story is why they're writing it or who fed it to them.
Right. Julie Su is very involved in this UAW situation. Her and Gene Sperling are the White House's point people. on this, and they've been involved in back channel talks or maybe the negotiations themselves. I'm not sure. But, this is certainly someone who's very capable of managing labor management relations and hammering out agreements. The situation here is that the companies have, brought in record profits. Mary Barra was on CNN today and was asked, how do you justify your $30 million
Let's
salary?
play this clip. We have this clip.
Go ahead.
This is the CEO of GM. And she was asked, she's sitting down with CNN's Vanessa Yurkovich, and the CEO of GM, Mary Barra, and this is the exchange. This was pretty impressive.
The union is asking for a 40% wage increase over 4 years. They're asking for that in part because they say CEOs like yourself, leading the big three, are making those kind of pay increases over the course of the last 4 years. You've seen a 34% pay increase in your salary. You make almost $30 million. Why should your workers not get the same type of pay increases that you're getting leading the company?
Well, if you look at compensation, my compensation, 92% of it is based on performance of the company. I think one of the strong aspects of the way our compensation for our represented employees is designed is not only are we putting a 20% increase on the table, we have profit sharing. So when the company does well, everyone does well. And for the last several years, that's resulted in record profit sharing for our represented employees. And I think you have to look at the whole compensation package, not only 20% increase in gross wage, but also the profit sharing aspect of it, world-class health care, and there's several other features. So we think we have a very competitive offer on the table, and that's why we want to get back there and get this done.
But if you're getting a 34% pay increase over 4 years and you're offering 20% to employees right now, do you think that's fair?
Well, I think when you look at the overall structure and the fact that 92% is based on performance, and you look at what we've been doing of sharing in the profitability when the company does well, I think we've got a very compelling offer on the table, and that's the focus I have right now.
Okay, so I want to, we need to clarify some terms here first.
Okay.
She's saying it's based, 92% of her pay is based upon the performance of the company. Now, I mean, and what she's basically saying is the stock price. And we should say that performance of the company is not the same as the stock price, because we can increase the value of our stock by buying back stocks if we want to, which used to be illegal until Ronald Reagan changed, under Reagan, the SEC changed those rules. We can increase performance by firing and underpaying our workers in that instance. And we should say that obviously, her performance pay is not aligned with the performance of the way that the workers are.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in the 1990s, there was a rule that came out that said you have to tax executive salaries. The company is taxed for executive salaries. However, beyond the first, beyond the first $1 million, it's taxed. However, performance-based pay, like stock options, would not be taxed. And this led the headlong rush into compensating employees, compensating executives with stock compensation. It's basically a tax dodge on the part of companies, but it also has created this short-term mindset.
Can I also wait a second?
If I can get the stock price up.
I wanted to address this too, because I noticed that, because I've spoken to Bill Lazonick, who I'm sure you've spoken to in the past, and he attributes this to the change in capital gains tax in the early 80s during the Reagan era. There may have been
that's another part of it, but I mean, the companies certainly on their part, and I think Robert Reich came up with this, by the way, and he's repented for it. The part of we're going to tax excessive corporate pay. The idea was to try to get corporate CEO pay down. But they put this loophole in that said, oh, but if you give your money based on stock, that's okay. We're not going to tax that. And it led to this imbalance. And that's the hidden driver of buybacks, by the way, because, it aligned stock performance with executive compensation in such a way that short-term stock profits were prized, right? So that has created this situation where, if I sell some of the stock and the stock artificially rises, my pay rises. So I'm going to do that. And
we should say,
and it's not just
my pay.
buybacks.
Everybody in the C-suite have their stuff structured that way, and the board of directors also end up getting paid. And so it's as if like the board of directors and the executives have almost like a side bet on the company. It's almost like a separate cottage industry that is sort of a barnacle to what the actual company itself is doing. And as long as the stock price goes up, which is not necessarily aligned with the so-called performance of the company, they're going to make more money.
Yeah, I think 30 years ago, the very quaint notion was that, yes, the stock price is tied to the performance of the company and the productivity of the company. But we've seen now we have way too much evidence. We know that isn't actually the case, and that short-term events, whether to fire workers, whether to cut labor costs, whether to shortchange innovation, shortchange research and development, shortchange workplace safety, quality of the product, to seek monopoly rents. All of those things are they change the stock price, but they don't actually make you a better company, and it certainly doesn't pay off for the workers.
Do you think, that interview right there, all the stuff that we saw with Howard Schultz, it really feels like in the context of these labor battles, like we've seen with the producers in the SAG-AFTRA and Writers Guild strikes, every time one of these executives, whether it's like in an on the record interview, or when they're saying stuff to Variety in that instance, they come off so bad.
Yeah.
Is it in a way that I don't recall this happening before? Do you think that these executives are just more out of touch than at any other time, or is it also a function of things that are happening in the labor market are putting more pressure on them, and so they're getting tougher questions, and they're on almost like on a high wire?
Yeah, I think all of that is true. I mean, public sentiment has certainly changed. The latest poll I saw about the UAW strike is that 75% of the public supports the workers' position. And, media reflects that to an extent. These particular CEOs, they're used to getting softball interviews on CNBC or Bloomberg. They're just not used to the kind of scrutiny that they're seeing about their own compensation, about whether workers are getting a fair shake. It's just a different mode of questioning that they're used to, and obviously they're not meeting up to the moment.
All right, we're going to be talking in about a half an hour or so to a representative from the UAW, so we'll get more into that. But I wanted to turn to the other sort of while we're here, a couple of questions, a few about the National Labor Relations Board. You wrote a piece about a non-compete agreement. And this is one of the big sort of reforms we've seen at the National Labor Relations Board. The most recent one, I want to get to this non-compete in a second, but I want to ask you just a couple of questions on the Cemex ruling, which essentially, I've sort of referred to as card check light, in that it expedites the process of essentially the union recognition. It puts the burden on employers as to why there is a problem with just, a majority of the people saying we want a union and not allowing for an extended period of time where the management will have the ability to sort of head off a union vote by unfair labor practices. Let's just talk a little bit about the limitations of that in terms of like what tools the National Labor Relations Board has at this point to actually get to a contract. So they have the ability to get to the existence of a union now much easier. What about the next step with the contract?
Yeah, I mean, that's more difficult because the NLRB by statute is prevented from saying, okay, after 90 days, you have to go to mediation or something like that. That's disallowed in the statute. However, there is, and our Harold Meyerson actually broke this, there is a potential for kind of a workaround that if there is a lack of bargaining in good faith, as presumed by a certain amount of time that passes between the union recognition and the first contract, that can be seen as some sort of unfair labor practice in and of itself, and the remedy would be to set a contract at a particular level, maybe based on the industry that they're in, the wage scale, the average wage scale in that industry, and it goes to X level above that or something like that. This is a little more of a roundabout way, but it's kind of the only way that we can get that under the current law, under the NLRA. Anything beyond that, you would have to, get some legislation in Congress. The PRO Act that has been sort of languishing in Congress for years included a mediation angle that after 90 days, 120 days, I forget the exact number, there would be mediation to get to that first contract. We don't have that now. And the only thing the NLRB can do, and it would be good if they did this because it would be something at least, would be this kind of workaround.
All right. And just to be clear, so that everybody understands, you get recognition as a union, and then you got to get that first contract. And a lot of times what happens is you get union recognition and they just draw it out. They draw out the contract negotiations. So, and we should just add, the National Labor Relations Board has also said that a non-compete agreement is an unfair labor practice. Is that right?
Well, yeah, they're at the beginning of this. So there was a complaint that was filed by a regional office. This is kind of the first step. That says, yes, a particular non-compete agreement at a company, a spa called Juvely, was an unfair labor practice. If that, goes up to the full board and the board rules and agrees with that, it would make non-compete contracts essentially unenforceable in most cases in the country. And this builds off a memo that Jennifer Abruzzo, the general counsel, wrote in May, asserting that, yes, this is an unfair labor practice. And she encouraged regional offices to find cases where she could make this case to the full board. This is the first case since that memo that has come out. And it just came out a couple of weeks ago. And so we'll see how that proceeds.
I literally want to hire a private security force around her at every day to make sure she doesn't trip or fall or whatever it is. What she's doing over there is amazing. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Really huge.